I live in the UK at the moment with my wife and my little boy. He's 19 months old. We've been here for around 6 years. Originally from South Africa. I grew up to our south of Durban in a little town called Port Edward, which some people might know. It's a very small town, quite a large farming community, and that's where my roots are. But in terms of family, we're expecting our next one in just over a month and a half. So family will
Wow.
be growing to 4, which we're really excited about.
Exciting times. Yeah, it's interesting
And
that you've gone to the UK and I was in the UK and I came here. So
it is interesting to see which people leave the UK to go to South Africa and the ones who leave South Africa to
yeah,
go elsewhere.
yeah. I guess
Yeah.
it's grass is greener concept, isn't it? And sometimes we just need a change, don't we?
Yeah, I think the grass is greener here because it rains all the time.
Yes, that's true. I don't miss the rain. So let's dive into the drinking story a bit, Lloyd. Tell
Sure.
me what age you were when you started drinking.
So I think my first exposure to alcohol was probably around the age of 4 or 5. My parents, in terms of background, are both alcoholics. Still to this day, are both alcoholics, and they've got alcoholism both in their background as well. So my dad's mom died in her mid-40s from alcohol. My mom's side has got heavy alcoholism as well. So some of my brothers became teetotalers at an early age just because of the family traits that were lingering. We used to go up to the Drakensberg to visit the Snow as a family. And when we'd go to a little place afterwards to have breakfast, they'd give us a shot of schnapps to warm us up. And from very early on, I knew that was kept in the freezer. So when we had guests around, I'd go dig in the freezer and bring out the bottle of peach schnapps at 5 years old and walk through to the lounge and ask for a shot of it. The first time I got drunk, I was 10 years old. That was at my sister's wedding. I had cousins there, thought it was quite funny to feed me cider and champagne. Being 10 years old, it didn't take too much, and I was wobbling all over the place and sick. And I actually had a cousin who stepped aside and spoke to me, and it's something that's always stuck with me. He said to me that it's not right for me at that age to be drinking like I did. That's unfortunately the parents that I had weren't role models, and he'd always be there if I needed support, and I shouldn't be looking to them as, I suppose, setting an example of how I should be living. So it was very early on, and it just continued. We got family holidays. I would either be allowed to take a bottle of schnapps or some or sherry with me on holiday in my teens, and it just continued and through high school, university. I know for a lot of people it's a big one. I moved to the UK for 2 years after high school before I studied, so there was a lot of drinking, a lot of freedom when I had my own money to spend and could make my own decisions about where I went and what I did. So it just progressed, and I always thought I had my finger on the pulse.
We think we can control it, and then one day we just
Yep.
can't. Wow, that's quite a story, Lloyd. I've got a vision of this little boy drinking schnapps. That stuff is strong. I don't know how much,
Yeah.
what percentage alcohol is in it, but it's pretty high. And all I can say is well done to you now for turning around that pattern because you've created such a different future for your children.
I think that's a big thing. I mean, since I've been sober, I've looked back on that and I've thought about my childhood. I went through therapy for multiple years, all different kinds of therapy with different therapists over here in the UK. And I'll get to the therapy later, but a lot of it brought up childhood memories and the memories of my parents fighting when alcohol had been involved. And we lived in a farm in Port Edward. And I remember one evening, my parents had a massive fight, and my sister and I were both young. She's 4 years older than me. Took the car keys and we hid them because we knew one of them would always leave when there was a fight. So we hid the keys. They had a fight. They couldn't find the keys. So my mum took us and set off on foot. And the nearest neighbor to us was 4 kilometers away through the farm. So in the dark, in the middle of the night, in our pajamas, with no bags, we walked through plantations. And I've got so many of those memories from childhood that have stuck with me, and I've really struggled to shake. And therapy helped to an extent, but they're still memories, even if you don't have
Yeah,
the
of
trauma or
course.
the PTSD from off the back of
Yeah.
it. And now often I think about how amazing it could be for my little boy and our baby to be to have a childhood that doesn't involve those memories. It might involve like waking up to watch the sunrise and promises that weren't forgotten and missed. So I'm really excited about that. It's a future I can
Yeah.
give them.
Yeah. Oh, you've done something amazing. It's heartbreaking, isn't it, to think of you and your sister walking across the fields without enough clothes on to keep you warm. And that's the last thing you would want for your children, isn't it?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I can tell you've had a complete mind shift there. So when you got into your 20s, what happened then as you developed your career?
The relationships came in, and I think the more independence I had with my career, the more control I thought I had over the drinking. In my mid to late 20s, I was part of the drinking tribe, as many people speak about in your podcast, before they joined the sober tribe. And it just was a way of life. I worked in private banking. We were in the sales team, and you drank every single day after work. If you could, you drink during lunch. You'd clock off early on the Friday and drink. Weekends were full of barbecues or braais, whoever's listening. You just constantly drink. And looking back on it now, for my birthday, people would buy me wine glasses, and they'd buy me wine bottles, and they'd buy me wine decanters. And everything was always alcohol related. Even for Christmas, people would buy me alcohol related presents
Yeah,
because I was just,
because it was part of your identity.
exactly, thought I was a connoisseur, but I actually didn't realize I had a
Mm.
problem. I remember waking up midweek, 3 o'clock in the morning on the couch with the TV still going and an empty bottle of wine on the floor. I think for a large part of my life, I've drunk to numb and to not feel the experiences I had as a child, and as a way to escape the realities of adulthood, the pressures that work brings on. Life just gets more and more difficult. And the more you drink, the more you think you're escaping, but the more you're just delaying the experiencing of the reality of what's there. It ramped up into my mid to late 20s. And I suppose moving over here came with its own stresses. We moved over 2018. At 19, we got married. 2020, lockdown. We all got sent home. Drinking culture changed. It became quite normal to crack a bottle of wine midweek and sit at home and drink it. And I think it just really lent itself to this idea of being okay to drink all the time, being okay to drink alone, being okay to drink to numb what's happening in the world with deaths or rising inflation or terrible interest rates. But the world went through a tough time, and I think I tried to drown that out to a large extent.
And you were married by then, I think.
I was
What
married in
about
2019. Yeah.
so what about your wife? Was she a drinker?
Never has been a big drinker. I think spending time with me, she probably started to drink a bit more, as in sometimes having a second glass. You know what I mean? I think once at a New Year's Eve, she's got a bit tipsy and didn't feel very good the next day. So she's always loved to be in control. She's a therapist herself. So she doesn't like this idea of losing control. And for me, it was as soon as I could lose control, I could get away from just being in my shoes all the time. And I loved that. And I never understood how someone would want to be in control of their lives all the time. If you had this way to escape and go to an alternate reality of the version of you, but that doesn't feel any pain, feel any stress, anxiety, and it's easy to escape. You can just take something, put it in your mouth, and you're escaped. So she's always been like a little angel on the shoulder when I've had the devil on this.
Oh, well, that's great.
And
Because if you'd have married a heavy drinker, it would have been much, much harder. But I think
thank you.
those of us that needed that escape door, it's about how comfortable you are in your own skin, isn't it? And it
Yeah,
sounds like your wife is very comfortable in hers,
she
and so
is.
she
She
doesn't want
is.
to escape it. Those of us that
Yeah.
do have maybe got a bit of work to do. So interesting. Did you used to worry about it? Say COVID time, did you used to think, oh, I'm drinking too much. What shall I do? Did you ever take breaks? Did you do dry January? Did you have the rules? What was going on in your mind?
I always thought I had control of it until I really didn't. I always thought
Right.
that I've been drinking from an early age. I always considered myself someone who could handle my alcohol. We'd go on boys' weekends and I'd be the last one to bed and up in the morning early and start drinking again. I'd just never have the onset of a hangover, and people thought it was incredible. I thought drinking was my superpower. So I never really put things in place. We went on holiday the year my boy was born, and my wife said to me just as we were leaving, she said, I'd like you not to drink this holiday. And I got cold shivers thinking, we're away for 4 days. How on earth am I going to do this? I got through the first day and I started to get jittery and shaky the second day. And we went to a restaurant and it was a set menu, and they brought out a bottle of wine. And I said, we don't want it. They said, it's included. You have to have it. So I thought, here's an opportunity for me to break that promise because we're not going to waste the bottle. So I tucked into the bottle. As I think of it, like every time we had holidays or Christmases, the first opportunity I could find to get a restaurant or a pub or an off license, somewhere to get a drink in me, just because I think I was always
Mm.
going through the early stages of withdrawals. So no, I didn't really put too many interventions in place. I tried to limit myself. I try and say, have less, take some time off. I read somewhere that it takes 21 days to change your habits or to start a new habit. So I said, I'm going to take off 21 days. I did it. No alcohol. Got to day 21 or day 22. I had a glass of wine and I came back stronger with drinking than ever before. It was much, much worse because I hadn't convinced myself that I wanted to stop. I was
You were
just
white-knuckling
delaying
it,
it.
using willpower, and willpower
Yeah.
doesn't work. It doesn't stick, does it?
After that, I said to myself, I can do it because I got to 21 days. So clearly I've got this under control. And I
Oh,
really
yeah.
didn't.
I did that. Always dry January, and then just literally counting till I got into February and then thinking, I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic. I can do dry January. It was interesting what you said about being in withdrawal and when you got on holiday, looking around for where you could get a drink. I was exactly like that. And I think those of us that drink daily, I think we do spend our days in a state of withdrawal. And that's why that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock drink is so sublime, because it's taking
Yeah.
us out of withdrawal, just like a heroin addict has their first hit. They're just back where they need to be. That's what they feel. So it's so true. So what changed? Tell me, when did you realize that it had to change?
So last year, I think went through a bit of a tough patch. Around September, my dad had a gallbladder removed and he had complications and was in ICU for 3 weeks. At the same time, I tore my meniscus on my knee and I wasn't able to run, had to go for an operation. I was very much bound with a sub 1 year old toddler keeping me busy. Finances were quite tough. And I think it all just came crashing down. I had a massive project at work and I was working late. And in the last 4 months before I stopped, it got really bad. I was drinking a 1 liter bottle of gin a day as a basic, hiding it. My wife didn't know I was drinking that. I'd still be drinking a beer after work and then having a few glasses of wine through the day just to keep myself topped up, to keep me off
Yeah.
withdrawals. I became so sneaky and devious with how I was acquiring it and where I was hiding it. I had places all over the house where I was keeping bottles and things too hot to kind of blanket the smell, my breath, different places where I was drinking it. It was really difficult with work. Going to work and spending 8 hours at the office, including the commute, was really difficult. Sometimes I'd need to have a sip of something before I left. If I could, I'd try to get out for a lunch break and have a drink with someone or by myself. After work, I was grabbing a few G&T cans on the way home. And one of the podcasts I actually listened to with Jason Lewis Williams, you probably remember him. He spoke about this kind of
Yeah.
way of life where you find yourself standing out at the pub thinking, I can't go in, but I need to. Like your body is actually craving it. And you know that if you do it, you can get through the rest of the day. I had days when I went into the office, I was there for 3 4 hours and I called in sick. I just needed to get back home and have some alcohol to keep breathing. And something inside me had, by that point, you've gone too far. The difficulty is pulling back because as soon as you try, you start to get this onset of withdrawal. So it's so difficult. You're in such a spiral that
Yeah.
you need to keep drinking. And the problem is you need to do more every single
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
maintain what the levels are like.
And you're not drinking to get a buzz, you're drinking to feel normal. That's a
Exactly,
true sign
exactly.
when it's got a hold of you then.
Yeah, I wasn't waking up in the morning. I'd be getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and vomiting because my body was in such a bad state. I'd go to the kitchen and have a swig of gin and then wash it down with some water and go back to bed. Get up at 7 in the morning. At the later stages, my body was struggling so much with the quantity of alcohol that I was consuming. That's basically when I hit rock bottom. It was around mid-December last year. I'd been through a weekend of severe binging. I was drinking a bottle of gin a day on top of wine and beer and things like that, and socializing with friends at sports events and on weekends. So my body just started buckling. Got up one Monday morning, my wife went to work. I had a couple drinks. I got online, I worked, and I just couldn't keep anything down. I couldn't keep anything in me. My body was shaking. If I stopped drinking, I went into withdrawals. If I carried on drinking, my
Yeah.
body was starting to reject it. That happened through that night. We had a bit of a tiff when she got home that night. That night I drank again. The next morning I woke up and I hadn't eaten anything for 2 or 3 days. I couldn't keep water down. My whole body was shaking. And I sat her down and I just told her the truth. I told her what had been going on for months, what I'd been doing. One of the most difficult things I've ever done.
It sounds such a lonely time, because there you were hiding the bottles, so not being open with your wife and then being at work and trying to keep all that show on the road. Must have been horrendous, but you've got enormous strength that not only have you made the change, but you managed to keep all that going. until
Yeah.
your body just said, no more.
I think that's the thing. You hear about functional alcoholics,
Yeah.
and to an extent, in my family, people refer to themselves as functional alcoholics, and they wear it as a badge of pride. I think all of us just feel like we're big drinkers. We come from a community of big drinkers, and you get on with your day to day. If you wake up, have a hangover, just have some water, have another drink, and keep
Yeah.
going. I think one of the toughest things was being honest with my wife, just
Yeah.
because I felt like I'd let her down when I told her it's this weird, dirty little secret that you carry with you
Yeah.
for so long. And there's so much shame in it. But once you can get past that initial conversation, you can wear it with pride. It becomes part of your past. So something that you used to do. And that makes it a lot easier. I think once you're able to own it and understand it and start communicating with people and sharing your story, it actually really helps other people to understand that it's fairly normal.
Absolutely.
Not that every single person does it, but it's not unusual to be
No.
in that space and to lean on something like alcohol to that extent.
We're in such an alcoholic society, aren't we? It's absolutely everywhere. And then you've got the peer pressure of your colleagues. So tell us
It
a bit
really
more about that conversation. Was it a terrible shock to her, or did she know that something was going on?
It's funny because she's a therapist. When we sit down, I speak to her as a husband speaking to his wife, and I can see in her eyes if she's listening as a wife or she's listening as a therapist. And she's is really good at being the wife. And in this situation, she listened to the wife. I think because of that, she took it really hard. So it wasn't just, I understand, I hear you've been drinking, let's get you help. There was a lot of hurt around the lying, the
Yeah.
mistrust, the times I'd been alone with our little boy and I'd been drinking. She
Mm.
started thinking back on all the times she was like, when we were there, had you been drinking? This birthday party, had you been drinking? And I said, yes, I was being completely honest. I needed to be. I needed to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
weight of it was just too heavy. Uh, it really broke her down. It took a while to get that trust back. And it's something that when we had those daily Zoom chats with Sue and a few other people, like one of the first things I said, how am I ever going to win her trust back? How am I going to trust me again after I've lied so much? But it comes back. They say time heals all wounds, and I think it does. I think there's testaments to the person that you really are deep down at your core when you take the drinking away from it. I think I lost touch with my core values. And over the last few months, I've really been able to reconnect with those values, the things that are important to me. One of the podcasts I speak about your tribes and the drinking tribe and the sober tribe. And it's amazing. I've had to step back from a few groups of people who are just constantly drinking. I've been through a few experiences where in January, I went to a bachelor's in Poland and stayed sober. I was the
I
last one to
remember
bed.
that.
I
Yeah.
was up early in the morning for the same friend. I went to his wedding in South Africa in Stellenbosch in March, and I was there. Everyone's drinking wine the whole time. It's a beautiful place. Stayed sober, went to bed last at the wedding, first up in the morning, swimming and having a ball. It really is my new superpower now. I remember everything from the events I go to, and I'm finding that it's rubbing off on people as well. You go to a wedding, you don't drink. Someone else says, oh, you're not drinking. I didn't really want to either, but everyone else was going to drink. So it starts to spread like wildfire. I went to a farewell drinks yesterday and of a colleague of mine, and I got there and he said, grab a beer. I said, I don't drink anymore. I'll get alcohol free. And someone else said, I'll do alcohol free too. Someone else arrived and said, oh, you're both not drinking. I'll do alcohol free. So it's funny how it really catches on and how much peer
Absolutely.
pressure there is around it.
Yes. Yes. So people almost feel relieved when they see other people not drinking, don't
Yeah,
they?
because you're not going to
Yeah.
be that person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
interesting and well done you. I remember reading on the WhatsApp group that you'd been to a weekend, a bachelor's thing in Poland and not drank. And you were only a few weeks alcohol free, weren't you then?
yeah, I think I was about 4 weeks at the time.
How did you do it?
I keep referring to the podcast, but I found some of the analogies so useful. And Nigel Jones spoke about starting day one, not at the base of the mountain, but on top of the mountain. And that
Oh,
really was
yes.
helpful for me. This idea that you don't have to pour your way out of alcohol to become a non-drinker. You can start at day one being a non-drinker. And that viewpoint really shifted things for me. I didn't need to choose to not drink every day. I just chose to be alcohol free. It is difficult in the beginning because your brain and your body are going through so many adjustments. The anxiety levels were sky high. The first week, I ended up in hospital the day I stopped drinking with withdrawals. I was there until 3 in the morning on a drip. I went to the doctor, I got put on meds to help me with my cognitive function. It was really bad. And it doesn't just happen overnight that you suddenly sober. Your body needs to get back to
Absolutely.
operating at a normal level, your liver, your brain. So it took a while, but still every single day I made a decision that just don't drink anymore. Once you've decided not to drink, you just never do it again. It actually becomes easier and easier every day.
Once we've made
Yeah.
the decision, we should never question it. But yeah, the non-drinker, the identity, because just as you said, your friends used to buy you wine glasses and whatever for Christmas.
Yeah.
That was your identity, and now you have a different identity.
And there's been a load of sensitivity around it in a really positive way. There haven't been a lot of bullying around, if you don't drink, you can't come to this, or why not just have one? No one's just tried to force my arm at all. And the great
Good.
thing as well is people are sensitive. The people that are true friends are really sensitive. The one whose
Yes.
bachelor's it was, he said to me, "You've been through so much. I completely understand. Don't come. It's going to be too much pressure." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm coming. I'm one of your groomsmen. You're one of my best friends. And I'll stay sober for you, but I'll still come to your events and I'll come to your wedding and I'll be there and I'll
Yeah.
dance and I'll have fun. And I'll show you what it's like to live a sober life and really experience life to its fullest."
That's it. You said there something about healing our brain and our body. I don't know if you've heard me talk about that guideline that I was given by a rehab doctor that for every year that you drank, it will take a month of recovery.
Oh, wow.
So,
I
how many
didn't.
months of recovery have you got ahead of you? Quite a few.
So I've had 6 months of recovery and I probably drank, if you consider the first time I got drunk until the day I stopped drinking, it was about 28 years. So 28 months, 22 to go.
Our bodies and brains are amazing. Once we stop poisoning them on a daily basis, they
It's,
they do their job. So you're just
it's
going to feel
really,
better and better.
it's really incredible. Since I stopped drinking, I think you probably have this mindset of that it's okay to drink and everyone's doing it because of the way it's marketed and then the way it's pushed us in society. Since I've stopped drinking, the algorithms that you experience in life, so on social media, be it on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, they go from being this humor around drinking and mothers drinking because they've got kids that are stressful or people drinking because their work's stressful. And I started to block that content. And it's constantly changing and evolving to people that love to travel and be outdoors and it's family orientated. And interesting how it keeps changing. But one of the most amazing things is some of the people who I've got the most admiration for in terms of celebrities, like Anthony Hopkins. I had no idea they were sober. I've always said if I had 5 people I could invite to dinner, he'd be one of them, alive or dead. And he'd be one of those people. And to hear that he's an ambassador for sobriety is just
Mm.
absolutely incredible. You've got the blinkers on when you're drinking.
Yeah,
And
you don't notice. So talk to us about the benefits.
you don't feel the benefits immediately because you go through so much initially. But once you start to get out the other side of it, and that's why it's quite interesting being on the RAMP WhatsApp group because people are getting past those stages of if they had withdrawals or getting their body and their brains back in order. But it's incredible how much you can actually do with your life and how fully you can experience it. As I mentioned earlier, you really start to connect with your core values again because when you've got the alcohol, the only value you have in your life is just drinking. Like you can put
Yeah.
nothing else before it because it's such a priority. I couldn't put my little boy before it. I couldn't put my marriage or my work before it, my family, myself, my own well-being, just because the biggest priority is to make sure that wherever you are in the next 3 to 4 hours, you're within reach of alcohol.
Just surviving the next few hours.
And once you get past that, you start to be able to reconnect with the things that you really cherish. So I'm an avid gardener. I always have been. I grew up on a farm, as I mentioned earlier, and everywhere I've lived, even if I lived in a flat, I've grown something that's edible on the windowsill somewhere. I've got an allotment, and over the last year, it just really went into a state of disrepair with me being so heavily intoxicated all the time. So I've got stuck back into that. Being a father, breaks my heart. It's one of the hardest things to think back that on all the occasions and all the memories within that first year that I was drunk and I'd been drinking and I'd been prioritizing getting alcohol. After his first birthday, I suggested everyone go to the pub to catch up afterwards. That's because I'd just had been there for 4 hours and I needed a drink because I was starting to shake. So some of my biggest regrets are just missing out on key moments. I've got photos. I skim through my phone and there's photos of me and him that I took of us playing together that I don't remember. it's really difficult to experience that. Now, I don't even need to take as many photos. I've always had a good memory other than the alcohol, and I just get to share every single moment with him. I get to wake up in the night when he cries and I'm sober, not stumbling through and not going for a drink after I put him back down. I get to be daddy in all the ways possible, and I love that to bits. I get to be a husband to my wife. We get to have conversations instead of her sitting there looking at me, knowing that I've drank too much, but not knowing how to call me out because she's only seen me have a glass of wine or two. But meanwhile, I've been drinking spirits since the start of the day. So things have just changed. The world's your oyster. I get to wake up
Yeah.
every day feeling fresh. I can decide if I want to go for a run, if I want to spend time with my boy. Work is incredible. My outlook on work has been so positive. The opportunities have been amazing. Just because I'm actually going and I'm getting through work to a better extent, I'm more productive. My anxiety levels have dropped drastically. I wouldn't say there aren't days that I am anxious sometimes because there's a lot of pressure, but I was going in sweating to the office because the alcohol was working its way out of me. I actually thought I had a sweating problem because I would sweat so much through the day. I hardly sweat anymore. So
Yeah,
it's
well, it was
really
all the poison coming out, wasn't it?
so many facets, reconnecting with friends who I haven't spoken to for a long time, and also just be honest with them. I mentioned it earlier that once I was able to speak to my wife about what I was doing, it made it easier to speak to other people. And it's something that Sue's mentioned. You would probably say the same thing, is that be surprised how supportive people are. And they actually
Yeah.
get upset when you don't tell them early on. If you say, I stopped drinking 6 months ago, they say, oh, that's interesting. Why? You say, I had a problem. And they're like, why didn't you reach out? You should have told me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so true. The people that love you and care about you are really concerned about that. So that's been one of the main benefits as well, is just reconnecting. I had so many unread WhatsApps and emails and messages because I was just too inebriated to actually sit there and reply to people. And I couldn't call people because I knew I'd be slurring. So I receded into this little
Yeah.
pocket of my
Your
life that was safe and bundled in alcohol.
Yeah, your life gets smaller and smaller, doesn't it, when you
It
drink
really,
too much to such an extent that you're not really interested in anything else, even your little boy and your family.
yeah,
Oh, and I think one of the joys of sobriety, and I can tell you're experiencing that, it's just the joy that we get from everyday pleasures, like you
yeah.
going to your allotment. Hopefully, there's no more empty bottles there.
No, but there used to
That's
be.
a
That's a
classic,
sad
I
thing.
know,
Yeah.
classic place. So yeah, just gardening and playing with your kid and your wife. When you say how hurt people get, my husband was a bit like that. He said, "What is it about your life with me that makes you so unhappy that you've got to drink like that?" And the irony of it was that I wasn't particularly unhappy. Really, it was just the alcohol had got such a grip on me. So
Yeah,
it
it
is
does.
hard for partners, and good on your wife. She's had a lot to cope with, but
She
she's there
has.
for the
And
good parts now.
she's stuck through it with me, which I'm really pleased.
Yeah, and don't beat yourself up for missing some of your little boy's early memories because you've got so much ahead of you with
I
him.
know.
And imagine how different his future's going to be now to how it would
Yeah.
have been.
Yeah.
There would have been a distance between you, and now
No, I
it's
agree. I agree.
yeah, because we can't even connect with ourselves when we drink too much, can we? We just lose ourselves.
Just numbing yourself completely.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's madness, really. So, what about if someone's listening to this and they're back where you were a year ago? What would you say to them? Let me rephrase that. What could
Sure.
somebody have said to you that would have hauled you out of this trap?
So the tricky thing is nothing that people could say to me would have changed my mind. My wife asked me several times to cut back and to stop. And every time I went for therapy, it was because someone else had asked me. I hadn't made the decision in myself. I'd say you don't have to hit rock bottom if you see that you need more to get back to the same level. If you're becoming sneaky with the alcohol, or even if you're not and you just want to cut back, the decision that you have to make. For me, I needed to make up the decision for myself that I
Yeah,
was going to stop, because without it, you have to wake up every morning and it's my call. It's not like I'm trying to please someone else. So I would suggest to anyone who is a heavy drinker is maybe seek out some help before you do it if you can, because going cold turkey was quite dangerous
oh
and it
dear.
was extremely tough. one of the toughest weeks of my life, probably the toughest week of my life, physically, mentally, emotionally. And the funny thing is I went to hospital and they said to me, shouldn't have stopped drinking. I should keep drinking because I'm withdrawing. And I was like, well, that's why I'm here. And they just couldn't really assist me too much. So my advice would be to avoid the dangers of going cold turkey if you are heavily dependent on the booze. But also just, it's a funny one. You're not going to know what sobriety feels like until you experience it. And the only way to truly experience it is to get over those first few weeks. So I think if you've got the desire to change your life, give it a try. Give it a try. Go sober for a period of time and just see how things improve. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's not like you're clawing up this mountain every single day. Eventually the road levels out and it becomes easier. It even becomes downhill. It's so much easier once you're on that journey to keep going. And the benefit, they just keep coming up.
Yeah. And eventually, once you've got over the really tough couple of weeks, the benefits come in, and that's what drives you, really, isn't it? That's what keeps you going. You think, but I like waking up early, feeling great. I'll keep on doing this. And gradually it becomes a no-brainer that you're going to keep doing this. I love what you said about it's come from you, because it's no good other people telling us that we've got to change. My husband told me for a decade that I drank too much and it was driving him crazy, but I just didn't want to know. And in fact, I rebelled against it and drank even more. But one day when you finally make that decision for yourself, that's when it all changes.
Yeah, I did exactly the same. The more I was told not to drink, the more I tried to normalize it. And I'd hide the booze and be sneaky about it. I thought, no, going to tell me what I can and can't do. I've got this in my grips. The other thing I would say to people is just don't be shy to reach out. You'd be surprised who's willing to help you and who's willing to stand by you. And I think in the early stages, it's really important to have a core group of people nearby, loved ones, friends, confidants, people that you can trust, that won't judge you, that you can share the truth with. Because until you can share the truth, you're going to keep that dirty little secret and it can linger with you for a while. The quicker you can get it off your chest and get it out and normalize it and realize that you're not alone. And there's someone like Tribe Sober who can assist you with people to speak to. You're not like an absolute misfit to society because you got dependent on alcohol when you went through a tough patch. And people have done it before, you can do it. So it's nice to know that you're not in this alone and that there's a way out. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Shocking. Okay, thank you so much. Anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention?
Probably my last message would just be that this can really catch you by surprise. You don't have to have had a difficult childhood or have difficult circumstance now to be caught up by alcohol. And it really creeps. One day you're having a sip of wine, the next day you're having a bottle, and the next day you're dependent on spirits. And it does get to a point where your body can't handle it. So I think for anyone listening, if you think it's too late, it's not. And if you're worrying about it right now, reach out. Yeah. I almost joined Tribe Sober June last year and I didn't. And I wish I had in hindsight because I went through such a tough patch. I had the website open and I just didn't click join. The day I stopped drinking, I joined a Zoom call and it's been, I wouldn't say smooth sailing of the first few weeks, but it's been so positive to just be part of such a fantastic community. I'm not always so active on the WhatsApp groups, but it's there whenever I need it. I know there's always someone that can reach out and someone will be awake, someone will reply, and you can also just see that people are really benefiting from a platform like this. So thank you to you guys. It's been fantastic to join a non-judgmental community and just have a safe space to share when you want to or stand back when you want to and just know that you're not alone in this experience.